Welcome to the Real Estate Edit podcast. I'm Tara Kroc, CEO of the Real Estate Edit, a Charleston-based real estate agent and your guide to building a real estate business you're obsessed with. I've built a multiple six-figure business without cold calling, feeling salesy, or burning myself out, and have coached over 5,000 agents on how to do the same. Whether you're just starting out, ready to scale, or somewhere in between, this podcast is your go-to for marketing strategies, lead generation tips, and actionable advice to growing with confidence. Together, we're rewriting the rules of real estate so realtors just like you can create wildly successful and sustainable businesses. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Real Estate Edit podcast, where we dive into all things real estate, marketing, and building a business that gives you freedom. Today, I have an incredible guest who has built not only an impressive real estate portfolio, but also an empowering community for women investors. I'm so excited to welcome Becky Nova, the founder of Lady Landlords. Becky, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on today.
Yay. Will you please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I currently am a real estate investor. My husband and I own rental properties throughout New York and the Dominican Republic. And I also then, as I was going along my own journey as an investor, ended up starting a community called Lady Landlords to help other women also then become real estate investors and have that option to possibly either leave their 9-to-5 job, start a passion project, or just pursue whatever they want in their own lives.
I love that. So you invest in both international and here in the U.S., right?
Yes. We originally just started with New York. I'm originally from New York. I've lived everywhere. I lived in Spain. I lived in Portugal. I lived in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, years ago, I lost a business of mine when I lived in Spain and Portugal, had to move back to the States, lost like 6 figures, was totally in debt, had a horrible credit score. But at the time I met my now husband, who's from the Dominican Republic. His dream was, I need to buy a home. That was just the goal for him. No one in his family ever owned a home before. That was incredibly important to him. But I was broke, and we lived in New York City. Where am I going to do that? So we came across a concept within real estate, but many people know it as house hacking. The idea is really you live in a multifamily, you live in one side, rent out the other side, and it helps with the cost of living. So we started with that just to really get my husband that one American dream home with the white picket fence that he wanted. And at the closing table, I got handed a check for the tenants in the other unit. And I was like, this is amazing. I can get paid to do this. I'm like, we're doing this again. So we started expanding our portfolio throughout New York, the Bronx, Westchester County, Orange County. And then we also expanded into the Dominican Republic, where we have long-term rentals and short-term rentals. And that's actually where I now live half the year, thanks to real estate.
That's amazing. So I want to know, when you first decided that you were going to do this house hacking thing.
Right.
Obviously, you said credit was an issue, and I'm sure finances were like, okay, how are we going to make this happen? And I see this question a lot inside of our community of basically, how do I get started? Because I do not have this liquid cash just sitting here to be able to throw at a rental. So how did you very first get started with that? What was the process like for you?
The first thing that I had to do was really kind of go through my own understanding of financial literacy. Like I said, I was in debt. I had a horrible credit score. I actually found a financial advisor. And to me, financial advisors were always people that just worked with people that already had money. Luckily, I found through networking that there are financial advisors that'll also help you kind of improve where your finances are. So and therefore, you are in a situation where you can invest. So I worked with a financial advisor, understanding how credit worked, how to improve my score, how to get myself out of debt, how to start diversifying when I started having money coming in. That really helped. I used to work in cancer research. That's what I did, running clinical trials for about 15 years. I was able to pick up contract work that paid really good amounts for really little time to help get myself out of debt and then save a little bit of a nest egg. So I started really with that financial piece to begin with. Then when we said, okay, well, are we ready to buy a house? What does that even look like? That was actually where we ran into a lot of problems. When I started reaching out to realtors, to me, the first step, as somebody that knows nothing about real estate, I want to buy a house, I'm going to call a realtor, right? I cannot tell you, Tara, how many realtors I probably called in the Bronx that were like, nah, we don't want to talk to you. go get pre-approved. And I'm like, but how do I get pre-approved? And they're like hanging up the phone on me. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Then finally found out that, need to call lender first. That's a confusing thing. Go there, and I'm like, how do I even find a lender? So just talk to like the one bank that I actually had an account with at that time. Then I went back and called those same realtors, and I was like, woohoo, I got pre-approved. And they were just like, cool, go to Zillow, pick out a house, and then we'll sell it to you. And I was like, I have questions. This is not helpful for me. Like, I don't know where I necessarily want to live. I don't know what type of house is going to be best for me. The lender didn't really tell me anything. It was just like, cool, you can buy a house now. And I was like, what does that mean? What's my budget? I had to go through a little bit of a layering to find an agent that was willing to have a conversation with me. I'll never forget, it was actually sometime now, like in winter, but he was like, come to my office. We're going to sit down. We're going to meet each other. We're going to see if we like each other. I'm going to tell you what I can do. I'm going to tell you if I can help you. And then we're going to sign some paperwork, and then we're going to move forward. And it was just so cool to have somebody that we felt like just gave us just a couple minutes of their time. We were probably there for like maybe 30 minutes. Kicker, Tara, is I've actually bought about $3 million of property with that same person in about 6 years because he gave me 30 minutes of his time.
That's a lesson in itself for all of you agents that are listening. Don't discount, the first time home buyer because they're going to turn into something even more down the road. So,
and the amount of money and business I've probably referred to him because of that, just making me feel human and listened to. And I get it. We can't give time to absolutely everybody, right? We have to make sure, but really just taking a couple minutes to say, hey, what I can help you with, why don't you get pre-approved? Would you like me to give you a referral? Hey, are you ready to buy a house? Where are you in that process? Are you ready to sign an agreement with the realtor today to start working with them? Or is that really something that's kind of in 6 months? Just by asking a couple simple questions to vet, is this a possible client to give your time to? Or is this somebody that's just not really worth my time? Really does make a difference.
Yeah. That's a great little piece of information there. I'm just
thought you'd like that one.
Down. Yes, for sure. Then as far as you started in New York, you got your first property. Then I think the scary part, as if like your first property isn't scary enough, taking that leap to the second property, because you can't necessarily live in two places at one time to house hack a second time. So how did that look for you, like moving into the next thing?
I think your real estate agent listeners are going to also enjoy this one. So when we bought that first property, we looked at a few. We didn't go through too many, but the property that we ended up buying, it's once again in more of an urban area, right? I live in New York City. So at that closing table, like I said, when I got that check, I was like, oh, I'm buying another property. Everybody in the room was like, no, Becky, it's way too soon. You have to save money. It's going to take you years. This is New York here. But I kept in touch with my lender and my realtor, almost on like a monthly basis. I called them and I was like, can I buy another house now? Can I buy another house now? They checked in with me. They kept in touch with me. My realtor still, every single year, delivers pies to all of his clients since he's even been a realtor, chats with them for a couple minutes, checks in with people. It was probably, we bought the first house May 22nd, 2018. In December, my monthly check-in, I called my realtor, hey, can I buy a place? Maybe you're getting a little bit closer. I don't really know right now. We'll keep checking in. Okay, fine. Did you call the lender? And he said, hey, call the lender and you ask him first. It's been 6 months. See what he says. I'm like, all right. So I call the lender. Meanwhile, my husband comes home and he goes, hey, something really weird happened. You know Michael, our realtor? Yeah, I saw him coming out of the house across the street. And I was like, that's interesting because he asked me to call the lender for the first time in 6 months. He finally said, hey, you might be ready. Call the lender first. Called the lender. My lender too was like, hey, you know what? I think you actually are ready. I think we're in good shape. I think you can buy another house. Called my realtor back in May when he was doing the appraisal. Little old lady in the neighborhood. Hey, excuse me, sir. Who are you? Why you're in the neighborhood, right? The little old lady that's got to know everybody in the neighborhood didn't know him. Went over, asked him. He said, hey, I'm actually a realtor. Somebody is purchasing this house. I'm here for the appraisal. Oh, my husband and I might be retiring and selling our house in a few months. Keep in touch. He got the listing from that, ended up being able to put the deal together with us and to buy our neighbor's house, got both sides of the deal.
Oh my gosh.
We closed May 22nd, 2019, 1 year to the day.
That's incredible. Okay, that is the most fun story. Wow, talk about full circle.
Yeah.
That is crazy. And now, I'm sorry, you may have already mentioned it. How many properties do you have total now?
We currently have, so in the world of real estate investing, we talk about things in terms of doors. So we have 16 doors, meaning 16 rental units. So I have single families, I have multifamilies, kind of all dispersed around that. I have a couple duplexes, quadplexes, triplexes, and then single families between New York and DR, but 16 rentals.
That's incredible. So talk to me about how hands-on you need to be in order to manage this much. Now, obviously, Lady Landlords, I want to talk about your community too, but I really want to know when people talk about rentals and passive income, that's always kind of the hand in hand that comes together. But I want to know genuinely like the nuts and bolts. Is it really that passive?
All right. So on a scale of 1 to 100, I agree with you. I hate when people say passive. It is not 100% passive. Absolutely not. But people overcomplicate this so much, okay? I really feel that you're probably looking around like a 75% passive. There really is not, this is not that difficult of a business in landlording as we make it seem. Within the 16 rentals I have across 2 countries, self-manage all of them, takes about 3 to 4 hours a month. And we profit about $20,000 a month from those 16 properties.
That's amazing.
When you divide that up by the hour, not so bad.
Yeah, not so bad. 100%. Yeah. So when you decided that you wanted to go international, how different was that of a process for you?
A lot. So the first property, so we started buying the first couple properties like in New York. To my husband, really buying that first property in DR. Whenever I'm mentioning our properties down there, people are always like, oh my God, it must be gorgeous, on the beach, amazing, short-term rental, you must Airbnb it. And I'm like, The first property we bought was actually a new build that is for long-term sustainable housing for Dominicans in the capital, which is Santo Domingo, which is a huge city, okay? Not a beach there. You're not, you're not drinking pina coladas under the palm trees all day. That's just not that space. It was actually really important to us to be able to kind of pay it forward. And one of our favorite things about being landlords is to provide clean, stable, secure housing. So that was really kind of our give back. That is not the property that makes the most amount of money at all. But what was very fortunate for us, at least, was my husband is a dual citizen. That gave us access to financing options. That gave us, he also speaks the language, he understands how legalities work there. That made it much, much easier for us to then buy that very first property there. The second property, though, that is the beachfront Airbnb property that I live in half the year, that I don't even wear shoes for 5 months because it's less than 100 steps away from the beachfront.
Wow, incredible. And so speaking of Airbnb, I want to know, first of all, out of your portfolio, how much is long-term rentals, mid-term rentals, Airbnbs? Like, how do you divide that up?
So I value my time and my lifestyle more than anything else. To me, long-term rentals is the best way to make cash flow with the least amount of time committed. So almost all my properties are long-term. I have like 1 or 2 that I've done midterm with. I have the 1 short-term rental, and I really short-term rental that property out when I am not living there. And I live there during high season. So that's kind of the difference there. I also did not buy that property as a moneymaker. I made that as a happiness maker. Then I'm able to rent that out the rest of the year, and it actually covers my cost to live there for 6 months out of the year. So that kind of washed its own hands and has been fantastic.
Yeah.
But for me, long-term rentals are the most passive out of midterm rentals, short-term rentals. I feel like you can get nice stability. The name of the game there is to have fantastic tenants, screen them up front. The 3 to 4 hours that I use in a month, it's all screening and finding the right tenants. The most difficult times to manage tenants are when they're moving in and when they're moving out. So you want to make sure you spend the right amount of time and energy finding the right tenant to move in. Once they're there, it's just kind of on repeat. They know when the garbage goes out. They know where their parking is. They know who's cleaning the snow, all of those different things. The name of the game at that point, then, is to keep them there the longest, because the second most time-intensive space is when they move out. So the longer you can keep a tenant happy in your place with raising rent, right, with making sure that you're keeping up with market rent there, but to keep them as long as you possibly can, so then that way you don't have to go through those two most time-intensive spaces again. So if you can keep somebody for a good couple of years, honestly, it's kind of set it and forget it. Midterm rentals, you're kind of always in that like a little bit of a hustle mode. Well, I have somebody for 3 months. Well, okay, now they're moving out. Oh, wait, now they want a 4th month. You're almost like always kind of on call of having to be in a marketplace. Oh, okay, well, now they stayed a 4th month. Oh, but then the contract for the travel nurse had changed. So now she's only going to leave after the 4 months. She's not going to stay the 6 months. And you're kind of like just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Short-term rentals, you were consistently needing to market. You were consistently needing to kind of, I want to say rush in between. Well, they're leaving on Sunday, but somebody else is coming in Sunday afternoon. When can we get the cleaner in there? We have to fix this. Oh my God, I thought this was just going to be a nice simple turnover. They stay in this whole thing, right? There's something in the hot tub. We have to drain this, but we have new clients coming in. How do we explain to them now that they can't use their hot tub, right? I don't like playing with that.
Yeah. So if you were to suggest to somebody just getting started in the rental world, long-term rentals would be your recommendation.
I do recommend that. I feel like over the past couple of years, we've all kind of seen, little flashy people over Instagram and TikTok. Ooh, look what I've made in Airbnb. Look what I've made. Now it's interesting. I feel like during the pandemic in 2020, 2021, you had all these people that were saying, oh, short-term rental is the way to make money. And with interest rates so low, you had everybody and their brother buying it, right? If somebody else told me that they had a great idea to go buy a short-term rental in the Smoky Mountains, now all of a sudden everything's oversaturated, right? So you're not kind of first to concept. You're not the people that are making this top money unless you're really good at marketing and understand how your unit is going to be different than other units and understand algorithms. All marketing, right? But with restrictions now that are kind of just popping up in different places about Airbnbs, about not having those short-term rentals, I would always make sure that if I'm going to buy something as a short-term rental, it better work as a long-term rental. Because if all of a sudden that city, town, neighborhood all of a sudden bans Airbnbs, you should not have your business model completely washed away for that. So I feel like right now you're not seeing those short-term rentals. All of a sudden, a lot of those same gurus from 2020, 2021 talking all about short-term rentals, go back, now they're talking about midterm rentals. That's now what they're trying to sell you on. They're now trying to say, hey, this is actually the strategy for it. Meanwhile, the whole time, I'm just sitting back and collecting my checks on the beach.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I was actually going to ask you about Airbnbs and what your thought was, because I have seen that also, especially where I'm at, a lot of the counties, and they now have wait lists, and it's a lottery to try to get your property on Airbnb. Mm-hmm. A ton of people purchased, and now they're like stuck because they can't use it as an Airbnb. So I know that that's definitely an issue that a lot of people that purchased 20, 21, 22 are running into. So I was curious what your thoughts were on that as well.
Yeah, and then now any place that you're having to kind of register your Airbnb, that means that you're already in an oversaturated market. Right? They're not doing that in a place where there's only 5 different Airbnbs. They're doing it in a place because now they're collecting fees, taxes. They're going to expect other types of paperwork. If you're on a wait list, that means you're not the only person that thought that, once again, in Disney World, that maybe we should have an Airbnb, right? Like these are just places that I find it so interesting when people say they're going to set them up. Can you be successful there? Yes. Is it a lot more difficult than it was years ago? Also, yes.
Yeah.
So to me, cool. If you want to go that strategy, and I feel like I've seen so many people lose their shirts on then trying to furnish a property. And once again, a short-term rental is not just, cool, I need to supply the bed and the linen. You need to have coffee cups and a coffee maker and the right type of coffee maker and forks and knives and all that. If you need to then say, hey, it's not working as a short-term rental, I'm not getting enough bookings, but I can rent it as a long-term, the resale of those items, you're going to get a fraction of the cost. Then now you're paying for these registration fees. There's extra taxes on top of it. Honestly, it's cutting into your margins. Unless you're really good with marketing and understanding how you can set your property apart, it is much more difficult to run a short-term rental business than it was 5-6 years ago.
I want to move into, you've built an incredible community. I've been a part of your community probably secretly for a really long time. And it is so supportive, so kind. It's called Lady Landlords. I want to talk a little bit about why you created it, what it's all about. I want to know all the things for those that are seeking support while they're trying to navigate this crazy world of investing.
Sure. So once again, we started investing in 2018. We were up to, I think, 7-8 units by the time we got to 2020. Pandemic happens, right? We all remember March 2020 here. Sorry to take us all back to that. But March 2020 came around. My husband and I already had a couple rental properties. You know, we were still self-managing, still kind of sorting things out at that point in time. My husband, as many other Americans did, came home. Babe, lost my job. They closed. They can't keep us on anymore. They can't pay us. What are we going to do? We lost an income stream. And I was like, we're going to buy more real estate. My husband's like, no, honey. I lost my income. I lost my job. And I was like, great. I know, that's why we need to do something for us. We need to buy more rental property. He was like, no, I have no money. I go, cool. I've already replaced your income with our rental properties in 2 years. We don't need your money. He thinks, he's just like walking away. He's shaking his head. To be completely honest, he walked into the bedroom, like kind of slammed the door. And I'm like, I know that there's somebody else out there that agrees with me. So I went on Facebook and started a Facebook group called Lady Landlords. And then I thought it would just be like me and like my mommy hanging out in there. And I was wrong. By the end of the day, I had like 100 requests to join. The next day, another 100. The next day, another 100. We grow at about 1,000 members every single month at Lady Landlords. We're not even at our 5-year mark, and we have over 50,000 Americans and Canadians in that group.
That's incredible. What do you find is the number one question or the number one problem that women inside the group are finding?
What's interesting is I feel like there's not, most of it, what I think is really interesting is like tenant situations. And this is something that was kind of one of the other reasons I started the group. I had my own questions. The very first set of tenants, remember I told you I was so excited that closing when I got that check of the tenants? We lived in the house for like a few days. Tenant calls us and is like, hey, the closet rod broke. I need a new one. Okay, well, did the rod break because the structural integrity of the closet rod I bought was subpar and it broke because me as a landlord picked a cheap closet rod? Or did she just hang up way too much stuff and put way too much weight on it and then did it break? Because one would be kind of landlord responsibility, the other would be like tenant responsibility. And it was this weird like, well, should we have to pay for that? Was it our fault? Was it her fault? What do we like do in those situations? And I realized then that landlording is not black and white. It's not always just one side or the other, and it's not always just what's in a lease, there's a yes or a no. It's not binary like that. In that situation, we just said, screw it, it's $20, we'll buy a closet rod. But these situations can become bigger and much more expensive. So the biggest trends that I noticed within Lady Landlords is we get a lot of questions about like, this thing happened with my tenant. How do I handle it? Whose responsibility is it? Sometimes it is like, whoa, lady, let's go back to your state law. You kind of missed a piece. So like that, we can give a very clear answer. But a lot of it falls almost in this gray zone of how do we provide customer service but not get walked on? And where is that line? Those are the biggest trends. A lot of it deals with tenant screening, right? Tenant screening, you're supposed to set your criteria. You're supposed to have a very clear understanding of who you accept versus who you don't accept. ESAs, emotional support animals. There are a lot of regulations around that kind of bring up questions. How to really set that criteria. We've all kind of heard, sob stories of, well, this person is saying because she has a horrible credit score because of this, do I accept them? All these things that kind of tie that emotion to also business and numbers and finding out where that fine line is. And sometimes, Tara, for you, where your line is and the decision you make might be completely different than my decision. And those things are okay, but it's really helpful to have other people to kind of bounce those ideas off of and take a look at together.
Yeah, and to give you a different perspective that maybe you yourself, because you're so close to the situation, I mean, you're thinking about the closet rod and you're like, well, I don't want to pay for it, and that's where your head's at, versus somebody that's like, okay, yeah, but, do you want to keep this person? Is it really worth however much it's going to cost you to replace? Is it going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than trying to find another person for that unit? You know,
right.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Right, Becky, she lives on top of your head. Give the woman a closet rod, right?
Right.
Like this is not, and exactly that. How do we then kind of make those tenants happy, but then also not have it like, whoops, we also broke the toilet when my son threw, the Matchbox cars down there, or, all these other situations. Like, where do you kind of draw that line, and what does that look like? So it's been really great because I feel like we're kind of the secret weapon for lady landlords to be able to come to, get the information they need so they can kind of go back out and then be confident and be like, yep, this time I'm going to buy the new closet rod for you. It'll be delivered later today, blah, blah, blah. But if it happens again, we will have to then charge you for it, right? To be able to go out with that confidence and make that decision, and nobody knows that you asked 50,000 other people for their opinion.
Yeah. I love that, because I think that is just in general when women come together and we're able to create a community around a specific thing and get the support that you need. And like you said, the confidence that you can get from that of like, okay, great. I got perspective from 50,000 other ladies that
right.
are where I'm at, and they understand, and they were able to give me a perspective, or they agreed with me, or they didn't agree with me. And I really got to think through like what where my mindset's at. So that's amazing. So I want to wrap this up a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about balancing, because you actually made a mention of how it really is about your lifestyle. That was really something that was really important to you when you started investing. So I want to talk about balancing life and investing. Like, how are you, first of all, managing your time? I know you said you work about 4 hours, which is incredible. But obviously, like, just mentoring others, doing all the things that you do. How are you balancing all of that? How does that work for you?
Sure. So I will say Lady Landlords actually keeps me much busier than my rental properties, hands down. Lady Landlords, that Facebook community with 50,000 women, we are like 24/7 in there. But for me, what was really important when I was building my portfolio was I realized I kind of needed to start with my end goal. My end goal was I wanted freedom, I wanted time, I wanted to be able to travel more, I wanted to be kind of anywhere in the world and not stuck being afraid to look at my cell phone to see who was calling, or be afraid if a tenant all of a sudden popped up in my text messages, right? Those were things that I was like, no, I need less stress. I worked in cancer research for 15 years. I needed something that would be a lot less stress and something where I felt like I could enjoy my life. I feel like people need to start there. If you want to be a person that wants to go and build a real estate empire and work in an office and realize you own half of Manhattan, cool. You can do that. But you're going to be working and building a very different lifestyle than the person that just wants to make sure that at the end of the month they don't have to worry about how they're going to make their car payment. Those are two completely different spaces. I feel like with the way that we consume information these days within social media, we get very tied up in, oh my God, she bought 4 houses this week, or oh my God, she's looking at another rental, oh my God, she's rehabbing another thing. We need to really figure out what our own journey is first, and then pick really that strategy within real estate to match it. There are so many different ways to make real estate work. There's something for every budget, every lifestyle, every time space, but you have to really think about what that is first. So to me, I always recommend to people, sit down for a few minutes and just kind of dream out and write what your kind of dream life would be in 5 years. Then pick a real estate strategy that's going to work for that. I can't tell you how many times in Lady Landlords I have women that are like, oh my God, this is so frustrating. I really hate rental properties. Cool. What's going on? Well, I bought this flip. We had to tear it down. I'm dragging my 4 kids on the way to school to go check because the project manager's not showing. The contractors are late every day. Then I got to go to my office. I'm working 50, 60 hours a week. Got to figure out how am I like doing all these different things. And I'm like, why are you doing a rehab and a ground up construction when you have no time? Doesn't make sense. Pick a different strategy. There's so many different options out there, but it comes with really starting, what do you want to see in your life first, and going from that. For me, I wanted to work the least and make the most amount of money. That was how I built my plan.
Yeah, That's really smart. And the idea that there are so many different roads, avenues, and paths. It's not necessarily linear. There are many different forks to that. So you can decide what really works best for you, your lifestyle, and your ultimate goals. So I think that's really, really smart advice. What is the advice that you would give to somebody that came to you and was like, okay, Becky, this is the year I am going to start investing. What do I need to know? And what is your perfect piece of advice for me?
I'm going to go back actually what I said about 30 seconds ago. Sit down and write down what you actually want in life. Not even what you want out of real estate, right? Real estate to me and real estate investing is a vehicle. That's just, we could be having the same conversation about stock market or crypto, but I don't understand those things. So I went with real estate. But sit down and think about what you actually want out of life. You hear in real estate investing a term called analysis paralysis all the time. Women that get stuck. They come to webinars, they go to summits, they go to every networking event, they read every book, listen to every podcast. But years later, they've still never done anything because they haven't just taken 5 minutes and figured out what do they want to have happen in their life. Once you know what you want out of your life and what that's supposed to look like, now we could put steps in place. Now we can say, okay, cool. Short-term rentals actually do make sense in your situation. Nope, long-term rentals and actually looking more at turnkey properties is going to make more sense. Nope, let's just go buy vacation homes around the world and you get to live in a different country every 3 months. But until we know what you actually want, you can't make a plan.
Amazing advice. I love it. Perfect. Well, I also want to mention, speaking of summits, you are speaking in our upcoming summit that's happening February 24th through the 28th. If you're listening to this prior to that, let us know, what is it that you're going to be talking about during the summit?
So being a New Yorker, I'm an action taker. And I like getting people very clear steps on how they can move forward. So just how I'm kind of talking about now, how to kind of write down and think about that dream life first. I go through in my presentation all about how to jumpstart your real estate investing journey and the 3 action steps that you need to take to get started. So I talk a lot more actually about how to really do that exercise of how to build out your dream life. And then now once you get that done, I talk about the next step you need to do to get finances, your time, your strategy in order. And then once those things are in order, how to make sure that you have just a nice, easy 1, 2, 3 step plan to be able to move forward and get your first rental property at the beginning part of 2025.
Incredible. And the Women in Real Estate Summit is a free event. You can get your ticket at thewomeninrealestatesummit.com and you'll be able to catch Becky's presentation along with 35 other speakers. It's going to be an incredible week. Let us know how people can connect with you off of this podcast.
Sure. For anyone that identifies as female, feel free to come over to Lady Landlords. Just type in Lady Landlords in Facebook and we will pop up. Come join all the fun there. And for anybody else, you can always find me on Instagram at the Becky Nova.
Incredible. All right, Becky. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your day to chat with us and let us know all things real estate investing. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review and share it with a friend that needs to hear it. And we will see you guys next week.